Have you ever felt trapped in a relationship, whether with a partner, friend, or even a family member, that seems to hold you back? Perhaps you've tried to convince yourself that things will improve, that the rough patches are temporary. Yet deep down, there's a nagging voice telling you that something fundamental is wrong. Stoicism teaches us to face reality with courage and clarity, to see things as they are, not as we wish them to be. This video is your opportunity to reflect on those relationships that may be hindering your growth. Relationships, after all, are central to our well-being. They shape our thoughts, influence our actions, and often determine the quality of our lives. But what happens when these bonds, instead of supporting us, become chains that weigh us down? The ancient Stoics, including Marcus Aurelius and Seneca, would urge us to act with wisdom and decisiveness. They remind us that it is not the events themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. The same applies to relationships. We must evaluate them with reason and courage, free from illusions. Today we'll uncover 11 clear signs that it may be time to end a relationship. These signs are not just red flags, but guideposts, leading you to a life of emotional freedom and personal growth. Stick with us until the end, because the final sign holds a transformative lesson that will challenge how you view not just your relationships, but yourself. Now, let's dive into the first sign. 1. Absence of trust. Trust is the invisible thread that holds any relationship together. Without it, even the most loving connections can unravel. But what does it truly mean when trust is absent? It's not just about catching someone in a lie or uncovering a secret. It's the persistent feeling that something is off, a quiet, gnawing doubt that refuses to leave. Have you ever found yourself questioning their every word, replaying conversations in your head, searching for inconsistencies? Do you feel compelled to verify their actions, scrolling through their social media or rereading old messages? This is what life looks like when trust has eroded. In a healthy relationship, trust acts as a safety net. It allows us to be vulnerable, to share our deepest fears and hopes without fear of judgment or betrayal. But when trust is broken, or worse, when it never truly existed, that safety net disappears. Every interaction becomes a potential landmine, and the emotional toll can be staggering. You might find yourself constantly on edge, preparing for the next disappointment, wondering when the next betrayal will come. Is this how you want to live? Stoicism offers us guidance here. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." This simple principle highlights the importance of integrity, both in ourselves and in others. If someone's actions repeatedly fall short of this standard, can you continue to place your trust in them? And more importantly, should you? Trust isn't about blind faith. It's about consistency and reliability. It's about knowing that the other person's words align with their actions, that their promises aren't empty. Yet when trust is absent, the relationship becomes a constant test of endurance. You may feel the need to explain away their behavior, telling yourself they didn't mean to hurt you or that you're overreacting. But is that the truth, or is it a story you tell yourself to avoid facing a painful reality? Consider this. Every time you doubt their words, every time you check their phone or hesitate to share your feelings, you're acknowledging the absence of trust. How long can a relationship survive under such strain? Trust, once broken, can sometimes be rebuilt, but it requires mutual effort and genuine remorse. It demands time, patience, and a willingness to confront the issues head-on. Are both of you prepared to do that work? If not, the path forward becomes clear. A relationship without trust is like a ship with a cracked hull. It may float for a time, but eventually it will sink. And when it does, it takes your emotional well-being down with it. Reflect on your own experiences. Are you clinging to a relationship that's already submerged, hoping against hope that it will somehow rise again? Remember, the Stoics taught us to accept what we cannot control and focus on what we can. You cannot force someone to be trustworthy, but you can choose whether or not to remain in a relationship where trust is lacking. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Similarly, waste no more time debating whether a relationship built on mistrust can thrive. It cannot. Ask yourself, what would life look like if you were free from the constant worry, the endless second-guessing? Imagine the peace of mind that comes from knowing your relationships are built on a solid foundation of trust. This is the emotional freedom you deserve. As we move on to the next sign, think about this. Does your relationship energize and uplift you, or does it drain you? Stay with us as we explore another crucial indicator of a relationship that may no longer serve your well-being. 2. Repeated betrayals. Few things cut as deeply as betrayal. When someone you trust violates that trust, it's as if the ground beneath your feet shifts. But what happens when betrayal becomes a recurring theme in your relationship? Whether it's through dishonesty, infidelity, or broken promises, repeated betrayals leave scars that can't simply be smoothed over. Have you ever found yourself forgiving the same hurtful action again and again, hoping each time it will be the last? How many times is too many? Betrayal, in any form, is a breach of the unspoken contract that binds a relationship. It signals a disregard for your well-being and the health of your connection. Yet, as painful as betrayal is, many of us hesitate to walk away. We convince ourselves that this time will be different, that the apology is sincere, that the circumstances were exceptional. But Stoicism invites us to look beyond these justifications. It is not the things themselves that disturb us, but our interpretation of them, Epictetus said. Are you interpreting these repeated betrayals in a way that excuses them, or are you facing the truth? The cycle of betrayal often comes with a toxic rhythm, a hurtful action, followed by apologies and promises to change, only for the pattern to repeat. Each time you invest a little more hope, a little more trust, only to see it shattered again. Over time, this erodes not only the relationship but your own sense of self-worth. Why do we stay in these cycles? Is it fear of being alone? A belief that enduring pain is part of love? Marcus Aurelius reminds us, what stands in the way becomes the way. The pain of betrayal, when faced with honesty and courage, can be a catalyst for growth. But staying in a relationship where betrayal is common only leads to more suffering. Each repeated wound hardens you, making it harder to trust not only this person but others in the future. Is that the life you want to build for yourself? Forgiveness is a virtue, but Stoicism also teaches us the importance of setting boundaries. To forgive is not to forget or to allow harmful behavior to continue unchecked. Forgiveness, when misapplied, can turn into enabling. Are you forgiving out of strength or out of fear? Strength leads to growth, fear leads to stagnation. If betrayal has become a recurring theme in your relationship, it's time to ask yourself some hard questions. Is there genuine remorse and a commitment to change, or are the apologies just words meant to placate you? Are you staying because you believe in the potential of the relationship, or because you're afraid to leave? Let's affirm something together. I am emotionally free. Comment this below if you're ready to reclaim your freedom from the cycle of betrayal. Every act of betrayal, no matter how small, is a lesson. But it's up to you whether to learn from it or allow it to repeat. As we move forward, consider another question. How does your relationship affect your energy? Is it a source of strength or a constant drain? Let's explore that in the next section. 3. You feel drained rather than energized. Relationships, at their best, are sources of vitality. They should leave you feeling uplifted, inspired, and recharged. But what if, instead, they drain your energy? Have you ever left an interaction with someone feeling exhausted, as though they've siphoned the very life out of you? This is not a trivial concern. It's a sign that something is fundamentally wrong. When we spend time with people who drain us, our mental, emotional, and even physical health can suffer. Consider how you feel before and after being with this person. Do you approach your meetings with enthusiasm or dread? After spending time together, are you invigorated or do you need hours or even days to recover? If the latter, you might be in a relationship that's doing more harm than good. The Stoics believed in preserving our inner peace above all else. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." But when you're consistently drained by a relationship, the suffering is all too real. Why do we allow ourselves to stay in these energy-sapping dynamics? Often, it's because of a sense of obligation. We tell ourselves we've invested too much time to give up now, or we fear hurting the other person by stepping back. But at what cost? It's worth examining the dynamics at play. Is this person constantly unloading their problems onto you without offering support in return? Do they demand your attention and energy without considering your needs? Healthy relationships are reciprocal. They involve a balance of give and take. When that balance is skewed, one person ends up bearing the emotional weight of the connection, leading to exhaustion and resentment. But here's a critical question. Have you communicated your feelings? Sometimes, people aren't aware of the impact they're having. A frank conversation can be a wake-up call, prompting them to adjust their behavior. However, if you've already tried this and nothing has changed, the issue may run deeper. Marcus Aurelius taught us to focus on what we can control. You can't change someone else's behavior, but you can control how you respond to it. If their presence consistently leaves you feeling drained, it may be time to reevaluate how much space they occupy in your life. Walking away from an energy-draining relationship is not an act of selfishness, it's an act of self-preservation. Reflect on your current relationships. Which ones leave you feeling energized and supported? Which ones leave you depleted? Imagine what life could look like if you prioritized relationships that nourish your spirit. You have the power to make that choice. Now, let's keep the conversation going. If this resonates with you, hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments. How do you handle relationships that drain your energy? In the next section, we'll explore another crucial sign, the imbalance of blame. Let's continue on this path to emotional freedom. 4. You're always blamed for issues. In every relationship, conflicts and misunderstandings are inevitable. But what happens when, no matter the situation, the blame always seems to fall on you? Do you find yourself apologizing even when you know you're not at fault, just to keep the peace? Or perhaps you've started to believe that you are, in fact, the root of every problem. This is the toxic cycle of constant blame, and it's one of the clearest signs of an unhealthy relationship. Blame, when unfairly assigned, creates a one-sided dynamic that prevents growth and resolution. Instead of working together to address challenges, the relationship turns into a battleground where one person is always the scapegoat. Over time, this erodes your self-esteem and fosters resentment. Have you ever stopped to ask, why am I always the one at fault? Stoicism teaches us to examine our own actions carefully, but it also warns against internalizing the judgments of others. As Epictetus said, it is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. The blame game often serves as a deflection tactic. When someone constantly points the finger at you, it may be their way of avoiding accountability for their own shortcomings. This behavior prevents honest dialogue and mutual understanding, both of which are essential for a healthy connection. Without accountability on both sides, conflicts remain unresolved, and the same issues resurface again and again. Ask yourself, are you in a relationship where you feel free to express your concerns, or are your attempts met with defensiveness and accusations? If every discussion turns into a critique of your actions, it's time to recognize the imbalance. Healthy relationships are built on mutual respect and shared responsibility. No one should carry the weight of every disagreement alone. Stoicism encourages us to take responsibility for our own mistakes, but it also reminds us to stand firm in our values. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." In this context, it means refusing to accept blame for things beyond your control or responsibility. If you've addressed this pattern and it persists, it may be time to set boundaries or reconsider the relationship altogether. Continuing to absorb blame without challenging it will only lead to further emotional harm. Remember, standing up for yourself is not an act of defiance, but an act of self-respect. Reflect on your own experiences. Have you been carrying the burden of blame in your relationships? If so, what steps can you take to break this cycle? As we move on, let's examine another common sign of disconnection: loneliness in the presence of others. 5. You feel lonely, even when together. Few feelings are as isolating as loneliness within a relationship. Imagine sitting next to someone you care about, yet feeling worlds apart. You may share physical space, but emotionally there's a chasm between you. Have you ever found yourself in this situation, wondering how it's possible to feel so alone while being together? This kind of loneliness stems from a lack of emotional intimacy and connection. It's not about the absence of conversation, but the absence of meaningful exchange. The silences between you feel heavy, not comfortable. When you do speak, the conversations remain surface level, avoiding the deeper topics that foster understanding and closeness. Do you ever feel like you're just going through the motions, rather than truly sharing your life with this person? The Stoics valued meaningful connections and believed that superficial relationships add little value to our lives. Seneca wrote, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you, but improvement requires openness and vulnerability, which are impossible without genuine emotional intimacy. If you feel lonely even when you're with someone, it may be a sign that the relationship lacks the depth needed to sustain it." This loneliness can manifest in subtle ways. Perhaps you hesitate to share your thoughts or feelings because you fear they'll be dismissed or misunderstood. Or maybe you've tried opening up, only to be met with indifference. Over time, these experiences teach you to withhold your emotions, further deepening the sense of isolation. Have you asked yourself why you stay in a relationship that leaves you feeling alone? Is it out of habit, fear of change, or hope that things will improve? Stoicism encourages us to confront uncomfortable truths with courage. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." You can't force someone to connect with you on a deeper level, but you can choose to seek relationships where emotional closeness is a priority. Before moving forward, take a moment to reflect on your relationships. Do they fill your life with warmth and understanding, or do they leave you feeling isolated? If this resonates with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share your thoughts in the comments and hit the like button if you've ever experienced this kind of loneliness. Up next, we'll explore the dynamics of effort in relationships, an essential ingredient for any meaningful connection. Stay with us as we continue this journey of reflection and growth. 6. There's more criticism than praise. Imagine a relationship where your flaws are magnified and your strengths are ignored. Every small mistake is highlighted, but your successes pass by unnoticed. Do you often feel like you're walking on eggshells, waiting for the next wave of criticism? If this sounds familiar, you may be in a relationship where criticism has replaced praise, and it's taking a toll on your emotional well-being. Criticism, when constructive, can help us grow. But when it becomes the dominant form of communication, it chips away at our confidence and sense of self-worth. In a healthy relationship, there's a balance. Feedback when necessary, but also recognition and celebration of each other's efforts and achievements. Without this balance, the relationship becomes a source of constant tension. Stoicism teaches us to accept feedback without being consumed by it. Epictetus advised, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." However, even the most resilient mind struggles under the weight of relentless negativity. If the majority of your interactions are filled with criticism, it's worth asking, is this relationship helping me become the best version of myself, or is it pulling me down? Consider how this dynamic plays out. Perhaps every conversation feels like a critique session. You might hear phrases like, "Why didn't you do it this way?" or "You're always making mistakes." While occasional constructive feedback is normal, constant fault-finding is not. It's especially harmful when praise and encouragement are absent, leaving you to question your worth in the eyes of the other person. Have you tried addressing this issue? Expressing how the imbalance of criticism affects you can sometimes shift the dynamic. But if your concerns are dismissed, or if the pattern persists despite your efforts, it's a sign that the relationship may not be built on mutual respect. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." In this case, waste no more time hoping for the recognition you deserve. Seek it elsewhere, if necessary. Think about your relationships. Do they offer encouragement and validation, or do they leave you feeling inadequate? Reflect on whether the criticism you face is truly constructive or merely a reflection of the other person's negativity. Now let's transition to another vital element of any relationship: communication. Without it, even the strongest bonds will fray. 7. Lack of communication. Communication is the lifeblood of any relationship. Without it, misunderstandings fester and emotional distance grows. Have you ever found yourself in a relationship where meaningful conversations have all but disappeared? Perhaps the silence between you has become more telling than the words. If communication is scarce or superficial, it's a sign that the relationship may be struggling. A breakdown in communication often starts subtly. Conversations become shorter, more transactional. You might find that you're no longer discussing your hopes, fears, or even the mundane details of your day. Eventually, you stop talking about the things that matter altogether. How does this happen? Is it a natural drift, or has conflict made open dialogue too difficult? The Stoics believed in clear, honest communication as a tool for maintaining harmony. Seneca wrote, "A quarrel is quickly settled when deserted by one party. There is no battle unless there be two, but when communication breaks down." Even small disagreements can escalate because they're left unresolved. The space where understanding should grow becomes a breeding ground for resentment. Have you ever felt unheard or ignored in your relationship? When you do express your thoughts, are they met with genuine interest or brushed aside? This lack of engagement can make you feel invisible, as though your presence and perspective don't matter. Over time, it erodes the foundation of trust and intimacy. Reflect on your recent interactions. Are they fulfilling, or do they leave you wanting more? If communication is lacking, have you made efforts to address it? Sometimes, a simple but honest conversation about the state of your relationship can reignite the connection. However, if attempts to improve communication fall flat, it may be time to consider whether the relationship is worth preserving. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "Let each thing you would do, say, or intend be like that of a dying man." In other words, every interaction should hold meaning and sincerity. Relationships thrive on this kind of open, heartfelt communication. If yours is devoid of it, the relationship may be slowly fading. As we delve deeper, ask yourself, how often do I feel truly heard in my relationships? If the answer is rarely, it may be time to take action. Let's continue with another critical aspect of healthy relationships: effort. Stay with us as we explore this essential component in the next section. 8. You're the only one making efforts. Healthy relationships thrive on mutual effort. Both people contribute, lifting each other through life's challenges and celebrating its victories. But what happens when the balance shifts and you find yourself doing all the heavy lifting? Have you ever felt like you're the sole architect of your relationship, tirelessly maintaining it while the other person seems content to coast? This dynamic can be exhausting and disheartening. You might be the one always initiating plans, reaching out first, or offering support during difficult times. Meanwhile, your own needs and desires go unnoticed or unaddressed. Over time, this imbalance can leave you feeling not only physically tired but emotionally depleted. Is it fair to shoulder the entire weight of a relationship? Stoicism teaches us to value our time and energy. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about your neighbors, unless with a view to some mutual benefit." In relationships, this mutual benefit comes from shared effort. When only one person is investing in the connection, the relationship becomes unsustainable. Have you noticed this pattern in your own life? Perhaps you've made countless sacrifices to keep the peace or sustain the bond, yet your efforts are met with indifference. Maybe you've brought up the issue, only to be met with empty promises or temporary change. This one-sided dynamic can create resentment as you start to question whether the other person truly values the relationship. Consider this. Are your efforts being reciprocated? If not, why are you staying? Stoicism encourages us to act in alignment with our principles, prioritizing relationships that uplift and support us. Seneca reminds us, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you." Mutual effort is a key ingredient in such associations. If you've communicated your feelings and nothing has changed, it may be time to reevaluate the relationship. Continuing to pour energy into a one-sided dynamic can leave you feeling drained and unfulfilled. Instead, imagine what it would be like to invest in connections where your efforts are matched, where you feel equally valued and supported. Take a moment to reflect. Are your relationships balanced, or are you doing all the work? If this resonates with you, let's hear your thoughts. Like this video and share your experiences in the comments. Together, we can support one another on the journey toward healthier connections. Next, we'll examine a more insidious relationship issue: control. Let's explore how it manifests and why it's essential to address it. 9. Control over your choices. One of the most fundamental aspects of any relationship is the freedom to be yourself. Your choices, big or small, should reflect your values, desires, and individuality. But what if someone in your life tries to control those choices? Have you ever felt like your decisions are not entirely your own, as if they require someone else's approval? Control can start subtly. Perhaps it's a partner who always insists on choosing where to eat or what to watch. Over time, it escalates. Suddenly, they have a say in how you dress, who you spend time with, or even what career path you follow. This control isn't about collaboration or compromise, it's about dominance, and it chips away at your autonomy, leaving you feeling trapped and powerless. Stoicism emphasizes the importance of personal agency. Epictetus taught, "No man is free who is not master of himself." When someone else exerts control over your life, they undermine your ability to act according to your reasoned choices. This creates a dynamic where your individuality is suppressed, and the relationship becomes a cage rather than a sanctuary. Think about your own relationships. Are you free to make decisions, or do you feel pressured to conform to someone else's expectations? Control often masquerades as concern or guidance. They might say, "I'm just looking out for you," or "I know what's best." But true support empowers you, it doesn't constrain you. How can you recognize if control is at play? Start by reflecting on your decision-making process. Do you hesitate before making a choice, worried about how the other person will react? Do you find yourself seeking their approval for things that should be entirely your call? These are red flags that your autonomy is being compromised. Addressing this issue requires setting clear boundaries. Communicate how their behavior affects you and assert your right to make your own choices. This may lead to a difficult conversation, but it's a necessary step toward reclaiming your independence. However, if the controlling behavior persists despite your efforts, it may be time to walk away. As Marcus Aurelius advises, be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. This means holding yourself accountable for maintaining your boundaries and seeking relationships that respect them. Control, once established, can be hard to break. But remember, your life is your own. No one has the right to dictate your path. Reflect on whether your relationships allow you to live authentically. If not, consider the freedom you could gain by letting go. Next, we'll delve into a foundational issue in relationships: communication. Without it, even the strongest bonds begin to crumble. Stay with us as we explore this vital aspect. 10. One-sided communication. Communication is the foundation of any strong relationship. It's the bridge that connects two people, allowing them to share thoughts, express emotions, and resolve conflicts. But what happens when that bridge only runs one way? Have you ever been in a relationship where it feels like you're constantly listening, but rarely heard? One-sided communication often begins subtly. Perhaps the other person dominates every conversation, steering discussions toward their own experiences, problems, or achievements. You might share something personal, only to have them quickly shift the focus back to themselves. Over time, you may start to feel like an audience member in your own relationship, rather than an equal participant. Does this sound familiar? Stoicism teaches us to value relationships that foster mutual growth and understanding. Seneca wrote, "No man can live a happy life if he turns everything to his own purposes." True connection requires reciprocity, an exchange of thoughts and feelings that nurtures both parties. When communication is one-sided, the relationship becomes imbalanced, leaving one person feeling unheard and undervalued. Have you ever hesitated to share your thoughts because you felt they wouldn't matter? Or found yourself withdrawing, knowing the other person won't take the time to truly listen? These are clear signs of a communication breakdown. Without the opportunity to express yourself, you may start to feel isolated, even within the relationship. One-sided communication doesn't just hinder emotional intimacy, it also prevents conflict resolution. When only one person's perspective is heard, problems remain unresolved and resentment begins to build. You might find that your concerns are consistently brushed aside or minimized, leaving you to deal with your frustrations alone. How do you address this? Start by voicing your feelings. Let the other person know how the imbalance in communication affects you. Sometimes people aren't aware of their behavior and may be willing to adjust once it's brought to their attention. However, meaningful change requires effort from both sides. If the other person continues to monopolize conversations or dismiss your input, it may be a sign that they're unwilling or unable to create a more balanced dynamic. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "Be content with what you are, and wish not for things which are not yours." In this context, be content with relationships where your voice is valued and your presence is acknowledged. You deserve connections that allow you to share openly, without fear of being overshadowed. Reflect on your current relationships. Are you truly heard, or are you merely a listener? As we move to the final sign, consider the cost of making excuses for someone else's behavior. It's time to confront the patterns that keep us trapped. 11. You're making excuses for their behavior. Perhaps the most subtle yet insidious sign of a problematic relationship is the tendency to make excuses for the other person's behavior. Have you ever found yourself justifying their actions, even when you know deep down that something isn't right? Maybe you've said things like, "They didn't mean it," or "They're just under a lot of stress." These excuses, while comforting in the moment, often mask deeper issues that need to be addressed. Stoicism calls us to face reality with courage and clarity. Epictetus urged, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." In relationships, this means living in alignment with your values, not bending them to excuse harmful behavior. When you consistently rationalize someone's actions, you deny yourself the chance to confront the truth and take meaningful action. Why do we make excuses? Sometimes it's out of love or loyalty. Other times it's because the alternative, acknowledging that the relationship is unhealthy, feels too painful. But ask yourself this: at what cost? How many times have you minimized your own feelings to protect the relationship? How often have you ignored red flags, hoping things would get better on their own? Making excuses can take many forms. Perhaps you've explained away their harsh words as a product of a bad day, even though the pattern persists. Or maybe you've overlooked broken promises, convincing yourself that their intentions were good. Each excuse chips away at your boundaries, allowing behaviors that undermine your well-being. Stoicism teaches us the importance of taking responsibility for our own lives. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." When you make excuses, you allow someone else's actions to dictate your emotional state. Instead of addressing the root cause of your discomfort, you create a narrative that keeps you stuck. How can you break free from this cycle? Begin by acknowledging the impact of their behavior on your life. Be honest with yourself about what you're tolerating and why. Once you've recognized the pattern, it's time to set boundaries. Communicate your needs clearly and firmly, without justifying or apologizing for them. If the other person is unwilling to respect those boundaries, it may be time to reconsider the relationship. Reflect on the excuses you've made in the past. Were they protecting the relationship, or were they preventing you from protecting yourself? As we conclude, remember this affirmation: I am emotionally free. Use it to remind yourself of your power to choose relationships that align with your values and support your growth. These 11 signs are not merely warnings, they are invitations to reflect and act. Each one points to a fundamental imbalance that can hinder your growth and happiness. Recognizing these signs is the first step toward reclaiming your emotional freedom and building healthier, more fulfilling relationships. If any of these signs resonate with you, take a moment to reflect. Share your thoughts in the comments. Your experiences and insights could help someone else on their journey. Don't forget to like this video if you found it valuable, and subscribe for more content grounded in Stoicism and personal growth. Thank you for spending this time with us. Remember, your well-being is worth the tough decisions. Until next time, take care of yourself and those who truly support your path.